Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, parents. I am so happy to be at this meeting this evening. The Ministry of Education and Youth will be having our parent sensitization session today as it relates to the PEP ability test. We have more than 820 persons online, and we are excited about this session. We're happy that you have taken the time to participate because we know that this exam is very important to you and it is very important to your children. As a parent of a PEP student myself, I am excited about this meeting this afternoon. And in the Ministry of Education and Youth, we always begin with prayer. So I now ask Ms. Sheena Stewart, our welfare manager, to begin with prayer. Ms. Stewart?
Good afternoon to all my colleagues here at the Ministry of Education, and good afternoon to all parents who have joined this meeting. I just want to share with you a quick word. And I'm reading from the book of 1 Kings 1:5-6. It says, "Now Adonijah, whose mother was Haggith, put himself forward and said, 'I will be king.' So he got chariots and horses ready with 50 men to run ahead of him. His father had never rebuked him by asking, 'Why do you behave as you do?'" And I end there. His father never rebuked him by asking, "Why do you behave as you do?" And I want for us to resonate and to think seriously about that question. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for this evening. Father, we thank you, Lord God, for the great task that you have given us as parents to mold and to guide lives. The passage that was just read spoke of David, a great king, a great leader. But David failed in many ways as a parent because he didn't admonish, he didn't rebuke his children. So, Father, we recognize that parenting and grooming children can be a difficult task. And so, God, an overwhelming one at times. And so, God, even though I'm lifting up all the parents who are on this platform, Father, I pray that you will give them the grace. God, I pray, God, that when they feel as though they cannot continue, when they feel as though they are at their wits' end, Father, I pray, let them not be like David, but when the challenges come and when they need to rebuke their children, when they need to call them in, when they need to call them out, when they need to correct them, God, I pray that you will give them the strength and the wisdom to do so, not causing emotional and psychological damage, but help them to recognize that they need to be corrected and to steer them on the right path. God, because David did not correct his children, a kingdom was divided. Because David did not reprove his children, there was bloodshed in his family. Because David did not correct his children, he ended up feeling severe pain. Because David did not correct his children, his own son tried to dethrone him. And God, we see the story of David playing out so many times in the lives of many families today. And so, God, we're thanking you, mighty God, that you're granting parents the wisdom, the knowledge, and the understanding as to how to groom and mold the children of today. Father, we thank you for the lessons that we'll be learning today. We thank you, Lord God, for whatever is imparted to parents. God, we just lift up every parent and every member of the Ministry of Education. God, we know that these are trying and difficult times, but we're thanking you, God, that the whole matter of education continues and must continue because the future of this nation, as we know it, resides in our children. And so we thank you, Lord God, that even that parent who is discouraged right now on this platform, we thank you, God, that you're imparting to them, God, courage, Father God, you're giving them joy again, peace again for that parent who has been stressed and unsure, not knowing what to do, what their next move is, having to balance work from home, having to balance school, having the children at home, not knowing what to do with the children at times, and it causes so much stress and distress at times. But God, even now I speak a word of peace to that parent who might be feeling overwhelmed. And God, I thank you that you're a God who makes ways where there seem to be none. And so, God, I pray, Lord, for that parent who is discouraged and want to give up. I'm thanking you, God, that you're sending a word of encouragement to their spirit now, and that you're sending help, and that you're bringing them out and you're bringing them through. So, God, we give you thanks. We put this meeting before you. Father God, we put the proceedings of today's meeting before you, and we thank you, Lord God, that at the end of this session, we would have said that it was good to have been here and that the objectives would have been met. So, Lord, we just put everything in your capable hands and we give you thanks. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. What a powerful prayer, Ms. Stewart. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your moderator this afternoon. My name is Karine Reed Clark. I'm the Community Relations Education Officer for Region 6. This meeting is a meeting that we have planned because we understand that there are parents who want to know more about the exam. And in this meeting, we'll be sensitizing you as it relates to the structure of the exam itself. And we're also going to be exploring the strategies which will help you to help your children to develop their critical thinking skills. And that is why so many of our staff members are online this afternoon, because we are here to support you. We want to remind you that we have 7 regional offices. If you are having any difficulty, we ask that you call us. If you cannot call us, all of us have Facebook pages. We also have Instagram pages. You can also come over to our offices and we will ensure that we provide the information to you as best as possible. So we are here to support you, and we are telling you as parents that you can reach out to us. Now we will be doing the greetings at this point. I will now invite Dr. Clover Hamilton Flowers, our Deputy Chief Education Officer, to bring greetings.
Thank you so very, very much. Good afternoon to everyone. It really, really is exciting times with all that has been happening. And just to let you know how pleased we are or happy we are that you have taken the time, to come to this session. This is saying that together we really want to be harnessing our efforts to help to make that big difference in the lives of our children. So today I want to just welcome every one of you and extending warm greetings on behalf of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. And just in terms of moving forward, I want to encourage everyone. And I think I would want us to think about maybe 3 P's, P, want us to just remember that we are all pulling together because we understand that we are playing a significant role in the lives of our children. Every child has a significant purpose. Every child has a place in this world to make a big difference. And guess what? Each child must go through a process, and whatever we're doing, these activities will help to influence how our children approach some of the challenges in life. And we know that assessment can become one of those challenging moments for them. But guess what? We can focus on the fact that they are people with purpose. We can focus on the fact that they have been designed with particular gifts and talents that can help them. We can also focus on the fact that they have been placed in schools that are committed to help them to be successful. And something I want us to remember is that the experiences that we provide for them at home, at school, wherever they are, will become rich resources rich means by which they can also use to deal with learning and that assessment. Sometimes we refer to it as the assessment monster. But we want you to know that you can speak encouraging words to your students, to your children, and as you continue to do the best for them, they will also be giving of their best. So welcome again, and we trust that at the end of our session today, you will leave saying, I am happy that I attended. So take care. We continue to interact together and share ideas moving forward.
Thank you so much, Dr. Flores. And I want to remind you parents that it really takes a village, and we want you to take the village approach, because when our children do well, the community does well, and the entire society does well eventually. So we have to pay keen attention to what we do at home with our children. I want to now invite Mr. Garland McDonald of the National Parenting Support Commission to also bring greetings. Mr. McDonald, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Clover Hamilton Flowers, Deputy Chief Executive Officer, representatives of the National Parent Teachers Association of Jamaica, education officers, parents, one and all, good afternoon. I greet you on behalf of the Chief Executive Officer of the National Parenting Support Commission, Ms. Casey Carr. The PEP ability tests, like so many educational activities, is being administered in unprecedented times. The need to support you parents is even more critical. It is with this that I remind those who already know and inform those who are not aware that the National Parenting Support Commission is an agency of the Ministry of Education and Youth, established as a body corporate based on an act of Parliament, the National Parenting Support Commission Act 2012. We're mandated to implement the national parenting policy with a view to ensure there is enhanced parental involvement in education. And parents, this is done through building the school-home relationship. We offer this through various activities and services. We offer counseling support for parents. So you could call the commission and request counseling. We have a helpline. That number, I can share it later as well, 876-560-9272. This particular helpline is a direct response to supporting our parents during the COVID-19 pandemic. We offer peer-to-peer support to parents across the country through the services of our parent mentors, and that you can reach out to the Commission for direct support as well. Parenting education sessions are happening all the time, at least 3 days per week. If you are so interested in attending one of those sessions, you may also reach out to the National Parenting Support Commission for support. Our email address is the National Parenting Support at moey.jm. I'll also share that in the chat. And our telephone number or landline, 876-967-7977. Let me wish you every success as you continue to support your children in fulfilling their educational aspirations. Thank you, and we look forward to hearing from you as we continue to support the various activities that you're involved in. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Garland. We're awaiting the information in the chat so that we can access the services at the National Parenting Support Commission. Now, parents, I know that COVID has been a rough road. And as a parent myself, I'm experiencing it. I have one child that used to enjoy staying at home and going to school online. And I had another one who she enjoys face-to-face. So there are challenges, and we are aware of those challenges, and we are here to support as best as we can. Now, we will be having a little pep talk, and this will be done by Mrs. A. Murphy of the Guidance Counseling Unit, and this is titled Parenting During the Pandemic. Ms. Murphy?
Thank you so very much, Mrs. Reed Clark. Good evening, everyone. Officers from the Ministry of Education and parents, good evening, good evening. I'm so happy to see so many of you on, parents, and this tells me that you are so interested in your children's education. Now, I have a few minutes and I'm going to do this as quickly as I can. Education of our children is a shared responsibility with all stakeholders. And parents, you play a huge part, especially now that children are spending most or probably all the time at home, because there are some children who are very few days that they've been out already. It's online school. COVID-19 has changed the way we do everything, especially parenting. These times are challenging. Parents, you know, they are stressful for many of us, especially with PEP coming up, and I can understand the anxiety that some of you are experiencing at this time, but I must congratulate you. Many of you have been doing a tremendous job. I know our parents are a bit uneasy about the outcomes of the exams, and you know, the students learning, you're wondering what is going to happen. But in spite of everything, parents, that is going on, it is important for you to take care of yourselves physically, mentally, and emotionally. I'm sure you would have heard it said before that empty bag can't stand up. So you have to take care of yourselves. And as you care for your children, remember to care for yourselves as well. Ask yourselves, how am I feeling? I'm sure you know the term, how me feel so, how me head feel so, and provide what your body needs. If you need sleep, if you need to eat, if you need to exercise, if you need to relax, you need to do it. Find out what is happening, ask yourselves, what are you experiencing, and treat with. People are dying, and they're dying without warning. So just don't die before your time. Spend some time on you. How are you going to do that? Let me purport a few examples. One, entertain yourselves. Now, Valentine's Day is coming up. Go out. Go out with your significant other. If you don't have one right now, find some old friends and link up. Have a drink. A light drink, I hope, but do something fun. Entertain yourself. Play some music, stand before your mirror and dance and laugh at yourselves. Laugh. Meditate. Take yourself away from the hustle and bustle, the chores, and meditate. Listen to some music. Just relax and listen to your heartbeats. Be active. When you exercise, you pump some blood to your organs, to the brain, and that helps to relax you. So exercise, and you don't need to go to the playing field. Just do it around your house. Do it inside the house. Get something and just move from place to place and just do something creative and exercise. Find a hobby, gardening. You can crochet. Many people are not doing that nowadays, but if you can do it, crochet, bake, write.
Issue.
Find a
3.
hobby.
That the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution
Stay connected to family and friends through face-to-face, or even though that is limited, and you can also do it on social media. Stay connected. Don't be so consumed with the chores and everything else and not stay in touch. Be creative. You know, the creative arts, that provides an outlet to release negative feelings. So you dance, you draw, you write something. And one very important part of releasing some of the anxiety that you may be feeling is to get involved with what is happening with your children. Know what is happening. How can you do that? You can get some support from them. Just find out what is happening. Check in with their feelings. Provide some emotional support. Find out from a child who has done well in PEP, and how did you do it? Come and talk to my child. Or you can have your child talk to the guidance counselor, because the guidance counselor can assist with helping your child to relax. Kiss and hug. That can't be too much. You kiss your child, hug your child, reassure your child. When the children are calm, it helps you to be calm as well. Be your child's biggest cheerleader. Teach a child a kind of mantra that helps to affirm the child's ability. For example, you can say you are capable, you are lovable, and you're valuable. And no matter what happens with COVID, you can do well. You are my star. You are my princess. But give your child some positive affirmation. Help your child to relax. So as you relax, you can do it with your child. Tell jokes and tell stories after they've done a hard day of studying and so on. Teach your child some deep breathing. You breathe in to the count of 3. In, hold it, out to the count of 3, slowly. So you can do some deep breathing with your child. As the exam draws near, I know the anxiety levels will increase. But what do you do the day before the exam? I'm begging you, parents, resist the temptation to threaten the child. Resist the temptation to say harsh words and encourage the child. Resist the temptation to give them heavy chores, because there'll be plenty of time after the exam for that. Before the exam, you're going to prepare, that's the day before the exam, prepare all the items that the child would need, the rulers and the pencils, the erasers, the right pencils, that is, sharpeners and timetable. Make arrangements for lunch. Prepare clean uniform for the child, because when the child looks great, they will feel great. Prepare water. Some of us are living in the country and we have water problem. You don't want the morning of the exam to be running up and down to get some water. So we have those things prepared. Get a clock so you can set the timer for early wake up. You make transportation arrangements, because when you do that, then the child will reach the exam on time, and that helps. Kiss the phone good night. We need to take these away the night before the exam, because this is when friends may be texting stuff to your child that will make them anxious. Avoid negative discussions. You know, keep it real, but keep it positive. The day before the exam, make sure that the child wakes up, the day of the exam, that is, make sure the child wakes up early. Rush increases anxiety. Prepare a light breakfast, and in the interim, you can think of giving the child a sandwich or so, because sometimes they're so anxious, they can't eat. And if they don't eat, when they get into the exam room, they may have low blood count and they may feel drowsy or weak. So you don't want that. Remind the child to do all the questions, leave the difficult ones for last, and come back to those. Reassure the child that you have prepared well and you will do well. The result of an exam does not define a child's worth. They can bloom anywhere that they are planted. Every school is a good school, and there are qualified teachers in all schools. So don't beat up the child. You need to go to this school, and if the child doesn't get to that school, something bad is going to happen. Not true at all. Remind the child to breathe. When you go to the exam, just breathe. When you feel anxious, stop and deep breathe. Pray for your child and reassure the child that the Lord of hosts is with us and that God can help. Accompany your child to the exam room if it is the exam center, if it is possible. And last but not least, just tell them PEP has nothing on you. You plan for it, you prepare for it, and you can nail it. Parents, be confident in your child's ability to do their best and let them know that whatever the outcome, you will accept it. After the exam, no post-mortem. Just take them out and play and think positive. They have done well. The results, you are going to be fine with it. God bless you. I wish you all well, parents, and we are looking for great results from our children. Have a good evening.
Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Murphy. We will try as parents to practice some of the things that you have mentioned today, because if we can't take care of ourselves, how are we going to be taking care of our children? So thank you so much for that. Now I invite Dr. Francine Taylor Campbell, the Education Officer for Chemistry, and she is the organizer for this event. She has put in a lot of work to ensure that this sensitization session can happen today, and we want to commend her for that. Now she is going to give you a brief overview of the PEP exam so that parents on the platform can understand what will be happening as it relates to the ability test this month. Ms. Francine Taylor Campbell, you may open your microphone and go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Reed. Okay, so welcome to all our colleagues, our parents, all education officers, right? All well-wishers and those who have students who are planning to, who are preparing for this examination. As indicated, this session is a parent session. I saw in the chat some persons were not quite sure what's happening. This is a parent sensitization session for our parents as they help their students to prepare for the ability test in particular. That is just one component of the primary exit profile, right? And so we're just addressing here today some strategies that you can use to help your students to develop critical thinking, all right? So essentially, that examination is covering content up to grade 4. Of course, you would have known that the new curriculum has stressed the development of critical thinking skills, and that is brought out in all subject areas. All right, just to say that the date for the examination is the 22nd of February. All right, there are other components. The dates will be indicated in the chat. We have with us our officer from the Student Assessment Unit who will be available to answer whatever questions you have during the question and answer section. So whatever you want to find out, just hold it a bit. Let us take you through the presentations that will show you what to expect on the ability test, what are the categories on the verbal and quantitative reasoning, and how you can get your words prepared. All the best. Okay, over to you. All right.
Thank you so much. Now we will be having a few presentations and then we'll be having the question and answer session. Now the first presentation will be done by Miss Machina Colson. She's the literacy specialist, and Miss Dion Gale, acting ACEO in the special education unit. And this session is titled Supporting Critical Thinking at Home. Ladies, you may go ahead and begin your presentation.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Reed Clark. It's my pleasure to be here. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, parents. I really am happy to be sharing with you. I will be taking us through a presentation. I'm just going to, okay, could I be allowed to share screen, Dr. Taylor?
Yes, you're a co-host, so you have that opportunity. You can go ahead.
It says only the host. Let me try again.
Oh dear.
Okay, share screen. Okay, great. Yes, it's up. Thank you. So we will be looking at critical thinking, as was said just now. The ability test has one component of the test is the verbal reasoning, which speaks to much of what the support we provide from the literacy and special education unit. As was mentioned by Mrs. Reed Clark, I will be presenting Machina Colson, and then afterwards we'll have Ms. Dion Gale, or acting ACO for special education unit. So we'll take you through now critical thinking in the home. How can you assist your children to prepare for not just PEP, but for life? Now, something we want to share with you is, let me just put this in slideshow so you can see it. Now, parental involvement, if you can see my screen, it's right there. It's one of the key predictors of early literacy success. Without your support, your children might not be as literate as they could be. So we ask for this partnership between yourself and school as we prepare our students for PEP and for life. Now, some critical thinking skills that are necessary as we go forward in our students and in ourselves is for them to be able to infer meaning, for them to explain themselves adequately, to evaluate, self-regulate, interpret, and analyze. Now, all of these skills are essential for them to be able to perform as critical thinkers. What does it mean to infer? It means simply to make sense of what you have read, and to be able to make predictions, to draw conclusions about what has been read. Explanation, for them to be able to explain themselves. As parents, it is important for you to provide opportunities for them to develop these skills within the home. The National Standards Curriculum speaks to the development of these and other skills at school, but it has to be maintained across the home, across the school, within the communities. So as parents, it is your role to ensure that this is done. What can you do at home? You may ask. These are some tips for you. We ask that you encourage your children to be active listeners. So you use questions that require of them to give you responses, and not just yes and no, for them to explain their answers that they would have provided, for them to listen keenly to what is being said, or whatever it is they're listening to. For many of them, while they were online, they would have benefited from what is being taught by engaging in active listening activities, being in the moment, being able to respond to questions, to prompts, to statements that are made. That's one aspect, one tip that we're sharing with you. Foster an inquiring mind. That's another tip. What does this mean? Let them ask questions. We know that at a very young age, our children, their favorite word is why? And sometimes we might get annoyed and say, stop. We are not to do that. Encourage an inquiring mind in your students, in your children, within your home. Let them ask questions, respond to their questions. Because if you don't do that, then you're not fostering an inquiring mind. When you watch movies together, when you read a book, when you're doing homework, allow them to question whatever it is that is not very clear to them. Ask questions, make statements, form judgment based on what they might be seeing. Allow your children to be problem solvers. You might have simple problems within the home that you simply tell them what the answer should be. For instance, you might have something that's spilled in the home, and instead of allowing them to come to the conclusion that this needs to be cleaned up, we say, go and clean up the place. You can use prompts such as, are you seeing what is happening in the living room? Do you see the water that is spilled? What do you think we should do about it? These are simple activities that we can engage in, and we might not even be realizing that we're fostering critical thinking by these simple tasks that we allow them to engage in. Use items in the environment to build their skills. So you might be taking them to the supermarket, allow them to choose between items that being offered by different companies. Which one is better based on the ingredients, based on the price? Have those kind of discussions within your home. Allow them to use things within the home in order to build their skills. So have them help with the laundry and explain, why it is we put the colors together and we put the whites together. Those kinds of discussions, simple tasks that it might seem that way to you. Many times we say to them, you have to sort, but why do you need to do that? Have these kinds of discussions, build their critical thinking skills. And of course, provide opportunities for your children to justify their answers. When they have provided you with an answer, do you allow them to explain why they have said this? Or do you say to them, that's not it, stop. I don't want to hear anymore. You're being rude. Many times when we take this stance, it causes our children not to become inquirers, not to build their critical thinking skills. So I encourage you this afternoon to provide opportunities for them to do so. And I want to share with you this one strategy. We don't have a lot of time. It's called the 5 why strategy to justify responses. So you keep asking them why, just as they used to do when they were 2 and 3 years old. You ask them. So for instance, there's a problem. Someone ran through a red light. Within the home, it might be that the child came home late. So you might ask, why are you late? Why are you coming home late? Because they might give a response, because they couldn't get a taxi. Why do you think you couldn't get a taxi? They might say, then they're going to justify why they couldn't get a taxi. There was a strike, or, there were a lot of persons at the bus stop, or something to that effect. You keep asking why, and it's 5 why, because the 5 why takes them further and further in explaining themselves. So for this example, why did you run a red light? I was late for work. Why were you late? I woke up late. Why the alarm clock broke? Why I didn't check it if it worked, and that kind of thing. So we encourage you to use strategies such as this, the 5 why within your home. Keep asking them why, and don't allow them to give you the same response, because if they're justifying, they can't give you to say, okay, I was late because I was late. That's not justification. So encourage the development of these skills within your children. These are some websites. We will drop the names of the websites in the chat that you can go to help your students, and also for you to get some ideas as to how you can help your children to develop critical thinking skills. I now hand over to Ms. Dion Gale, who will take us through supporting critical thinking at home for the child with special needs. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Unfortunately, we're having some technical difficulties, and the second part of this presentation we will not be able to share with you, as Mrs. Dion Gale is unable to come on at this time. However, we will continue the session, and we will now move on to the session called Quantitative Reasoning. And this is a very important skill. And Mrs. Meeks Williams of Region 7, she is the numeracy coordinator, and she's also a mathematics specialist. She will be conducting this presentation. Mrs. Meeks?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Mrs. Reed Clark. Good afternoon, parents. Good afternoon, colleagues. It's so good to be here. I know I have limited time, so I'll just get right into it. This afternoon, we're going to be looking at quantitative reasoning as it relates to the ability test. Let me just try and share my screen with you. All right, and in presentation mode. All right, there we go. Are you all seeing my screen, everyone?
Yes, we are.
All right, wonderful. This afternoon, we are going to look at the purpose of the ability test, which would have been discussed before. And we know that one of the major focuses of the ability test really is to test the student's ability to reason and process information. You and I know that one of the challenges that our students have today, our children have today, is reasoning through things. Our previous presenter would have hinted at that, but my task this evening is going to be taking you through what the quantitative aspect of the ability test will look like, what are the components of the ability test for the quantitative reasoning, and one or two strategies that we can use as parents, practical strategies that we can use as parents within the homes to help our children to prepare our children for this ability test. So, I know that all of us have our cell phones with us. And I have one simple question. If it is that you should multiply all the numbers on your cell phone keypad, multiply them all, how much would you get? And you have 10 seconds. If anybody wants to indicate in the chat quickly to tell me how much would you get? If you multiply all the numbers on your cell phone keypad, how much would you get? And we have only 10 seconds for this particular activity. And I hear persons shouting. I see Miss Anderson raising a hand. You have a response, Miss Anderson? 2 hands are raised. Miss Reed? Are you seeing any responses in the chat?
I am looking.
No responses I'm seeing where participants have raised their hands. Just say what the response is. All right, I can see you all multiplying away and you're trying to multiply 1 by 2 by 3 by 4 by 5 by 6 to come up with the answers.
Okay, so Ramesh Linton is one of the persons who probably has the answer. Go ahead, Mr. Linton. Unmute.
Does he have, is his hand raised? I'm not seeing
Yes,
him.
his hand is raised. Yes, Ramesh Linton. Go ahead, Mr. Linton.
Wait. I have to unmute him.
0.
He is unmuted.
Oh, I'm not seeing him. Yes. Go
I am
ahead,
hearing
go
a
ahead.
response.
Go ahead.
Linton, go ahead.
The answer,
All
he
right.
said the answer is 0.
All right,
Okay.
wonderful. The answer is 0. And yes, the answer is 0. Because, and this is one of the things with reasoning and the ability test. It does not test your mathematical skills, but what it really tests is your ability to look at a problem and to reason through particular problems. For this particular activity, we are reminded that if we know that any number we multiply by 0, no matter how huge it is, our answer is going to be 0. The purpose for this task is that sometimes when we get the activities, chances are we spend a lot of our time maybe doing things that are not really as necessary and not zooming in on the important aspect of what allows us to solve the problem correctly. So thank you very much, Mr. Linton. You are indeed correct, and the answer is 0. So we know that the ability test has both quantitative aspect and the verbal aspect. And when we talk about the math aspect of it, we are looking at the quantitative reasoning aspect of it. So the aim of the quantitative reasoning, parents, is to assess the students' fluency with basic mathematical concepts. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, but not necessarily as it would be for their, what they would actually be. It will actually entail, I'm sorry, some of what they do in their math classes, but it speaks more to them utilizing or applying these concepts that they would have learned to reason through tasks and activities that they would get. So the quantitative reasoning actually focuses significantly on data analysis. It also focuses on reasoning, and it also focuses on problem solving. So there are some quantities that we need to pay attention to, some categories that we need to pay attention to for the quantitative reasoning. One, we have patterns. We know that in our daily life, we see patterns everywhere around. We have also representing quantities. We have comparing quantities. We have approximation or estimation. We have data analysis, and we also have problem solving. What we're going to do this afternoon is to give you a brief synopsis of what a question in each of these categories look like for the quantitative reasoning. For patterns, the students may be required to what? Identify patterns. They may be asked to generate patterns. They may be also asked to describe patterns. And all this identification, generation, and description of patterns can be done within a sequence. They may also be required to complete or extend a sequence that is given. For example, which number best completes the sequence below? And they're given 2, 4, 6, 8. If it is that they are familiar with their timetables, this one probably will have been easy for them. But it's not only to identify it, but they should be able to state the reason for their response in the sequence. So not only to say it looks like the numbers in the 2 times table, but they can say that if the second number in the sequence is 4, what am I doing to 4 to get 2, to 2 to get 4? They must be able to reason that through. And if I have 4, what am I doing to 4 to get 6? And what can I do to 6 to get 8? So if we look at this, we recognize that we're adding 2 each time. So the students should be able to tell us what it is that they are actually doing to the pattern to generate the next item in the sequence. One of the things we need to recognize is that pattern comes in many shapes and forms. It doesn't have to be numbers. It can be several other things. It can come according to numbers. It can appear according to shapes. It can come according to colors, size, position, and orientation. So it can come in any or many forms. One of the things we're going to look at now is 1 or 2 everyday activities that we can look at with our children to see how we can help them. We can't go through them all, but to see how we can help them to get familiar with, to identify patterns, to generate patterns, and also to be describing patterns within the home. If you look at this one, this is a familiar one. I must apologize for the quality of the picture that is there. But what we're looking at is their multiplication timetables on the back of their books. We're looking at things that are inexpensive, things that are available to us, that we can actually use to promote this kind of reasoning in our children at home. So if it is that we ask them to look at the timetables, we can ask them to look at it, look at their 2 times, look at their 4 times, look at anyone that is there, and look at the pattern that exists, whether horizontally, which is across the page, or vertically. So we can have that kind of discussion with them. Look at the pattern, tell me what it is that you're seeing when you look at the numbers that fall under 3. When you look at the numbers that fall underneath the 7, what it is that you are recognizing with these numbers, and allow them to establish patterns from this. One of the other popular things that you can use within your homes, a calendar. A calendar is free. It occurs everywhere. So for this particular example, I looked at, let's say for the month of January. We snipped out a portion of January, which we would have put here. So if we know we have, and these are the numbers are representing the dates. So if we have 4, 5, 11, and 12, if we look at the snippet of January here, we would be seeing the same numbers in the same order. So if we look across, so the discussion we can have, if we move across from 4 to 5, what is the difference between 4 and 5? If we look across below, what's the difference between 11 and 12? So from 4 to 5, they can tell you that probably they add 1. 11 to 12, they can tell you that they add 1. So they're reasoning it through. They can also look diagonally. What about from 4 to 12? What about from 5 to 11? What is happening there? If we look vertically, we're looking 5 to 12, 4 to 11, what's happening there? And we talk about what is happening as it relates to the numbers, whether vertically, diagonally, or horizontally. Then we can pick out a section. Picking out a section, we can leave one blank. Talk with the child, which number you think should be there? Because they would have now identified the pattern in the previous one that you looked at with them, they start now knowing how it is that they are describing this. So to describe this pattern, they now recognize that vertically they are adding 7. So 7 plus 7 gives 14. So 6 plus 7 gives 13. So they will now know if I'm going vertical on the calendar, I'm adding 7 each time. Then what we can do is to increase the number of items that we omit and allow them to tell you the pattern, tell you what the missing numbers are, and tell you how it is that they came up with these numbers. So these are some simple things that we can do with them. For those students who may be a little bit more advanced, we can change the shape from just 4, and we can put in several other shapes, cutout shapes, and ask them to identify or to put in the missing numbers based on the pattern that is seen on the calendar. One other simple thing we can do, we all have dominoes at home. We have dice. These dominoes have patterns on them. So if it is that we lay out the dominoes and we are looking at them, we can lay them out according to a particular pattern. So if we look at this, the pattern that exists here, 4 dominoes are laid out. Which of the 3 dominoes below here would be the domino that would be next in the pattern? For this, the child has to reason through to see what is happening with the pattern of dots on the dominoes in order to get the other pattern that is there. So if we look at this, we're seeing 2, 1, 4, then 3. So if we look at the alternate dominoes, we see 2, 4. So that could give us a clue to what is happening on the domino that is there. So we can have that discussion with them. If we look at the pattern at the bottom and we look at alternate dominoes as well, it could also give us a clue. So having this kind of discussion with them, with the dominoes, of course, it can help them to develop different ways of coming up with description of patterns and identifying their patterns. The other thing is representing quantities. Students may be required to make sense of quantities, understand the meaning of quantities, not just compute them. One of the things we recognize with our students, when they get the questions, some students, when they get the questions, once they see numbers within the questions, what they start doing is actually just to perform the operation on the numbers that are there without actually understanding what the numbers are saying. One example that is given of a question that could be asked for representing quantities. I am between 10 and 20. I am an odd number. I am a factor of 26. What is this number? There are several websites that exist that have these simple math riddles on them. So if they're listening to these math riddles, over time they will start recognizing what it is that certain descriptions about numbers can actually be for representing a particular quantity. One of the things is to help the students to understand numbers. For example, let's look at 10. How do they see 10? For want of a better choice of a number. 10, do they see 10 as 5 more than 5? Do they see 10 as 1 less than 11? Do they see 10 as 10 less than 20? Do they see 10 as a combination of 2 numbers only, or do they see 10 as a combination of 3? Or it could be a combination of 4 numbers. So it's for them to understand what the numbers are, and having given a description of a number, a particular number, they can tell which number represents this particular quantity. They may also be asked to compare quantities. They may require to compare fractional numbers or whole numbers or decimal to determine which is more, less, or equal. Students may also be asked to compare quantities based on their length, temperature, or capacity. An example question, which fraction is the smallest? And you and I probably will know their best bet here. They may be looking at the denominator and saying that 4 is the smallest denominator, so 4 is the smallest fraction. And we know that that's a misconception. So there are several things that we can do to help them to understand how to arrange these fractions in order, or to compare the fractions just to tell which is smaller than which or which is larger than which. We have them in the kitchen when we're cooking. We have simple utensils at home within the kitchen. Sometimes because we want to preserve them, we tend to tell them not to touch them, because they're going to break them up or they're going to mash them up, but allow them to interact with them, use them. So for example, the measuring spoon or the measuring cup comes with fractions on them. So if it is that they look at the size of the cup and using these cups to measure quantities over a period of time, it can help them to determine or formulate for themselves or come to a conclusion which of these fractions can be bigger than the other, and how it is that they know that one fraction is bigger than the other. We have temperature guns using now. We can allow them to take the temperature, their temperature, temperature of their parents, temperature of your brother and sister, look at the number that is recorded on the temperature gun. Then for them to decide which of these numbers, who has the hotter temperature or whose temperature is colder, and then associating that hotter temperature with the numbers that are there. So if there is 36.5 and somebody else has a temperature of 34.5 for argument's sake, just for argument's sake, because that would be a little low for body temperature, which person has the highest temperature or the higher or lower of the two temperatures, and associate the higher temperature probably with the bigger number and the lower temperature with the smaller number, using their scales and comparing quantities. So allow them to use the things at home and get accustomed to what the quantities read so that they know which is bigger, which is smaller. Estimation. Students may be required to use approximation or estimation to solve real-world mathematical problems. Students may be required to use approximation or estimation to solve real-world mathematical problems. I'm sorry, that's a repetition. So let's look at an example question. Which fraction could be placed between the two fractions on the number line below? There is 1/5 and there is 4/5. It takes for them some understanding of what is 1/5 and what is 4/5 to know what falls in between. So how can we get them to be estimating at home? As I said, we can't go through, there are many possibilities, but because of the constraints with time, we may not be able to go through all of them. But let's look at discussions that we can have with them. How many coins, and if you want to be a little bit more precise, how many $20 coins stacked on top of each other are as tall as you are? And hear what they're saying. We can ask them how many $20 coins grouped together is as heavy as you are. If it is that they are to count for 10 hours straight, how far would they get to? So a lot of things come into play here when they're estimating it. It's not only to guess how much, but if a stack of 10 $20 coins is this high, then, and I am this high, how many of this stack of 10 may be as tall as I am? If it is that they're counting, they have to now start thinking of or considering how fast are they counting, how slow are they counting, what are they counting by? So these factors that they will have to consider now in order to give you their response. So there are several things that they will have to think about in order to give their response. And to these questions, there are not necessarily any right or wrong answers, but once they can justify their responses in this case and tell you how it is that they are reasoning, then that is the aim of this. But for estimation, we would also want them to get as close as possible to what a good response could be like. Data analysis is also another. When we talk about data analysis, we're looking at data, we're looking at most popular, favorite, and so on. So there are many things that they have at home, which is their favorite. Some of these children, they like ice cream, they like brand name shoes, they like phones, they like these things. We can utilize these things and ask them about their favorites. So if it is, they can be counting something as simple as how many cars has license plate beginning with JT and so on your way home. These things can happen. How many has license number, with letters AB? And they take account and look at which one of the license plate endings is most popular. Then have the discussion with them. How do you know that this one is most popular? Then they are able to tell you, well, this is the one that occurs most frequently. This is the one that I saw most. This is the one that I saw less, that kind of discussion. So that is the aspect where they're actually interpreting and making inferences. Problem solving. Students may be required to use their mathematical knowledge and skills to solve real-world mathematical problems, make sense of problems, reason abstractly and quantitatively. And when we talk about reasoning abstractly and quantitatively, it's going back to understanding the numbers that are represented in the problem. Use mathematical models to interpret and solve problems. One of the challenges that our children have these days is actually making sense of the problem. So the strategy that I'm looking at this afternoon is one strategy that we can actually also use at home to help our children to make sense of problems when they get them. So one of the simple things that we can do is a strategy that I've been promoting recently, and this is the 3-read strategy. And I'm going to give it to you parents in its simplest form. This strategy can also help them to understand what the question is asking or what the problem requires of them. So one, they read the problem to you. They read the problem once, twice, and 3 times. For those students who, children who may be having challenges reading, we can read it for them, no problem. But we want to ask them some questions. If they ask you, Mommy, the homework says this, ask them the question, what is the task about? Or what is the problem about? All you need them to tell you is the main thing that the problem is talking about. So if it is a perimeter problem, they just need to tell a perimeter. If it's an area problem, they just need to tell you it's talking about area. If it's back to perimeter, if it is fencing, they just need to tell you it's talking about fencing. That's all you need, because you need them to read and be able to tell you what the task is about. Ask them to read a second time, but when they read a second time, they are looking for specific things on each read. So you have the discussion with them. What information are you given? And the information that is given in the problem is, you ask them, what information are you given? And then the final thing is for you to ask them what it is that the question is asking you for. So that's basically what you can do to help them to understand the problem at home. Just ask them to read 3 times and ask them these 3 particular questions. And that takes us, ladies and gentlemen, to the end of our presentation this afternoon. So I hope you would have garnered something from this presentation. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Have yourselves a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Meeks. I enjoyed your presentation and I was taking notes because I have a child who is taking PEP this year. So I was jotting down, and I hope that parents, you are also jotting down too, because we want you to take as much information from this session as possible. Now, Miss Dion Gale is now back on, and she will be doing her presentation. She's also doing a presentation on supporting critical thinking skills at home, and she is the acting ACEO in the special education unit. Mrs. Dion Gale, please go ahead and share your screen.
Oh, just a sec.
Present
We'll ask
afternoon.
Mrs. Meeks, just a sec. Mrs. Meeks, can you unshare and then take down that so that Miss Gail can share, please? Okay, go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much for that introduction. Pleasant afternoon to each and everyone in the space. Miss Coulson, who was doing a part of the presentation, we had merged our presentations together. So I don't know, Miss Coulson went already?
Yes, she did.
All right. So I'm going to ask her to re-share. Is she available?
Yes, she's on.
All right. So I'm hoping that she's hearing me, because what we had done is combine our presentation, and I'm actually joining by phone. I'm not getting on via laptop, so I'm using my phone. So if she could share her screen and then go down to my section, I'd be so grateful.
She's about to share.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Miss Coulson.
Yes. And so go down to my section now, Miss Coulson. Thank you so much for that. Okay.
You're welcome.
Okay. So again, pleasant afternoon to each and everyone. And so for my section, I'm actually looking at supporting critical thinking at home for the child with special needs. So you would have heard the first part of the presentation done by Ms. Coulson that spoke to the same very thing. And so I want to say at this point that what would go for the regular child sometimes can go for the child with special needs, but we just have to do some adaptations. So let us look at this section. Go ahead, Ms. Coulson, you can skip. Ms. Coulson, other slide, please. All right. So the first point I have there is that you need to understand your child. All right. So your child with special needs is going to need a bit more. First one I have there is patience. So you want to be understanding and patient and allow him or her to take a longer time to get some of the concepts. Another thing that I have there is that you should not compare the child with special needs with the other siblings. We tend to do that sometimes as parents. Even with our normal children, we say the girl is bright and the boy is not. And, you know, we do things like that. But if you understand your child with special needs, first, I'd want you to understand what is happening, what the diagnosis is, if the child is with autism, or if the child is with a learning disability. And so once, if you get to understand the diagnosis, then you would not compare him or her with the siblings, because you need to understand that they will learn at a different rate. So they can learn and they will learn and they must learn, but they're going to learn at a different rate. And you're going to have to do some repetition and use a lot of pictures and a lot of hands-on experience. All right. I know some parents, they self-blame as well. So they say, it's because of me why the child is slow, or it's because of me, or it's my blood, you know, and all of that. But I'm encouraging parents not to go there, but just to deal with the situation and find the best ways how to cope. Also, you want among family to give each person some responsibility. So maybe bigger sister, she's in charge of teaching the child the ABCs. And then brother is really good with numbers or with colors, so you give him his little part to do. It's always more fun, and the child will feel, you know, more a part of if you give different family members different tasks to do. Next slide, please. But it is important that, you know, as a family, as I said before, the acceptance, the patience, the understanding. All right, next slide. All right, so we're going to look at some of the strategies now, because you want to develop this critical thinking aspect for your child. So I have there that you would want to have a structured environment. So even though it's at home, you know, you're going to structure, as in have a routine. So it's every day or every evening at 5 or 6, the child knows, come, it's time for math, or it's time for story reading, whatever the activity is. But you want to have a routine. So they get used to and they know what is coming up, especially for the child who is with autism. You know how important routine is to them. Also, you want to make it as interactive as possible. So a lot of questions, a lot of prompting, a lot of activities, coloring, hands-on. You go for a walk outside and you prompt the child to speak. And
You want it to be motivational as well. So you're going to say to him or her, good try it again. You have to keep reinforcing how good they're doing and that you're pleased with what they're doing. And take your time, you're going to get there. So again, it comes down to patience and understanding. Move on to the next slide, please. All right. So now let us look at this components of critical thinking, but in a more simpler form so that you'll get it. So you want your child to be able to identify. So you're going to ask questions from the child with special needs. Let us say you're in the kitchen. I heard that example used before. You want to say to the child, what is that used for? Or cause and effect. You might say to the child, why do we put butter on the bread? Why do you think? Do you like how it tastes when the butter is on the bread? Something like that. You also want to make inferences. So why does that happen and when does it happen? So the child can do some, recollection and make inferences. Also, you want to be sure for them to pay attention to details. So you want them to look and to tell you what they see, and you want them to pay attention to the main ideas. So I read the story to the child. What happened to the little girl? Or what did the boy in the story do? And of course, parents, you have to be mindful of the level of your child as well. So you will know what questions to ask. Some of the questions might have to be simplified a bit even further down. You might say, touch the boy who is kicking the ball, because your child might not be with speech. So you might say, touch, things like that, because you want to cater to whatever method the child uses best to learn. That is what you're going to concentrate on. And that is what you're going to make sure. So if it's a child that touches, or if it's a child that is able to talk and will express, then you do the prompting. If it's a child who likes to color, then you might say to the child, draw a picture of so and so and let us color it together. But you want to make sure, again, that it's interactive as much as possible. Okay, move on to the next slide. Because what I want to do now is actually to look at some of the exceptionalities and, how you would treat with. So let us say for a student who is on the spectrum, a child who is autistic. For those, I said before, those children, they really love routine. And they tend to have things that are their favorites, things that they love. And so you'd want to tap into that. So you know what your child likes. Okay, my son is on the spectrum and he tends to love cars. He loves cars. And so you might use car now at home. You would want to use the car to do math, maybe. Take up 2 of your cars and take them to me. Or you might want to say, which of the 2 cars do you prefer? Because remember now, we are looking at critical thinking. So take 2 of the cars to me. When he comes with the 2 cars, you'd have done some math there. But you know that you want to tap into critical thinking. So you're going to say, of the 2 cars, which one do you prefer? Why? Which one is bigger? Which one is smaller? Which one do you think runs the best? So you're going to ask all those questions again, the why and the what and the when. But you're using something that the child loves. And so you will tap into what they like and get them to relate to you and to the object. All right. Also for now, the deaf or the hard of hearing, this child is not hearing. So their main mode of learning is through sight. So it's what they will see. So for the child who is deaf or hard of hearing, you're going to use a lot of pictures. You're going to be using a lot of gestures as well. And, ask a lot of questions. It is even better if the parent is able to sign and the child is signing as well. So then, you're going to maximize what the child will benefit from. But in the case where the child is not yet signing or parent is not signing, then, you're going to have to use the pictures and have the child touch certain things, and you do a lot of writing. But again, you get them to think. So you show them the picture and then you'd probably write the question now. What is happening in the picture? Why do you think that is happening? If the boy did not kick the ball, what else could he have done with the ball? So, you ask a lot of questions for the student who is deaf, but again, you use your pictures and your gestures and all of that. For the student who is blind or visually impaired, their main mode of learning now is by hearing because you're not seeing. So for that child, you would want to tap into talking again now and having conversations, because With this child, he's not seeing. So you know, as a parent, will have to be explaining a lot of things, giving him the visual, how it looks. You're going to allow the child to touch the things as well. So when you touch this thing, it is soft. Why do you think it's soft? Which fruit do you think it is? You could be in the kitchen probably doing cucumbers for dinner, and you give it to the child to hold it. And, you say, since it is very cool and it is smooth, and feel the shape of it, it is long. Which vegetable do you think that is? Or which fruit do you think that is? So that's what you would do for the child who is blind or visually impaired. For the student with intellectual disabilities now, for them, it's a lot of repetition. You want to make sure that whatever activity you did today, you're going to do it tomorrow or for the rest of the week. Even if after day 3, you feel that the child would have gotten the concept, you are to continue into day 4 and day 5. And sometimes even the following week, you can go back to that concept again, because for the students with the intellectual disability, it's a lot of repetition. And as we said before, the concrete experience now, the hands-on. So you want them to do things. So while they're doing the sandwich in the kitchen, you're going to ask them some question. What does bread do to us again? Why do we eat bread? Do you like all the bread and the cheese taste? All of that. You like bread and cheese, but your sister likes bread with jam. Why do you think she likes that? So, you get the critical thinking going again. But for the students with the intellectual disability, it's a lot of questions and prompting and all of that. All right, move to the next slide, please. All right, so we're looking at strategies now overall. For the students with disabilities, intellectual disability, that is, you want to use like task analysis. Sounds like a big term maybe, or something that you're not used to hearing, but it simply means that you're going to break things down into manageable sizes. So you might have heard before, I think it was Miss Coulson in her presentation, she had an example where she gave the child 2 labels in the kitchen, and the child had to talk about both of them and compare. For the child with an intellectual disability, they might not be able to compare as yet, but they will be able first to talk about one of the labels. So in that case, you give them only one. And you will do that again, repetition over a time. You have them talk about that. Why do you like ketchup? Do you like the taste of ketchup? Why do you think ketchup is red? All the questions again for the critical thinking to come out. And then you would move from maybe one label after 2 weeks to 2 labels now. So they're going to be comparing now. So that is what is task analysis. It's just breaking down the same content, same exercise, but in smaller sizes, smaller, manageable sizes, they say. All right. And I spoke about concrete activities before too, meaning that you give the child a hands-on experience. So not just by talking, but by doing. So anything that you want them to think about critically, it's always good to give them something to touch, something to feel, something to have in their hands, and then you ask them questions about it. The crayon, it is shaped very slim and slender. Do you like the shape of the crayon? Why do you like the shape of it? So while the crayon is there in the child's hand, that's what you're talking about. So right there, they can be feeling it. So you wouldn't be showing them a picture of a crayon, but you'd actually give them a crayon if that's what you want them to talk about. If you want them to talk about a dress that they like at home. So this is a girl in particular, she loves to wear her red dress to church. When you're going to talk to her about the dress, go and get the dress and come and hand her the dress. Have it so she has it in her hand. Why do you like the red dress? Do you like the feel of the dress? When you wear the red dress, how do you feel? And you start talking about the dress, but you actually bring the object there. And I spoke about repetition before too, just how important that is, especially for the student or the child who has an intellectual disability. You want to keep repeating so they get it, and you reinforce the concept, and that is how they get it. Parents in general, it is very good when you include them in day-to-day activities at home, and you just do a lot of talking. It's better you're talking too much than you're not talking at all. So have that conversation with the child, keep talking. And I know that for some students who are on the spectrum, they don't like to really socialize and have that conversation going. But if it's even you alone talking, talk and prompt as much as you can. get them involved, wait for them to answer too. So, remember maybe the first slide I spoke about patience and understanding, you are going to need that. But I can tell you at the end of the day, it will be very beneficial. So you just remain patient and, take your time, do your at-home activities, make it fun, make them enjoy it, get them to talk about it, get siblings involved, get daddy involved, everybody, grandma, and you will definitely see some result as it relates to your child, being a critical thinker, being able to explain him or herself. So next slide, please. I think that is the end of my presentation. Yes, because I was told I had 5 minutes. I was trying to put everything, in one. But I hope I am leaving you with, some food for thought, something that you can think about. If you have any questions, I would be more than glad to take them. I don't know if we're now out of time.
We have a Q&A.
We will be having a question and answer section
okay.
of our final presentation. However,
all right.
I want you, Mrs. Gale, to tell the parents what is the special education unit doing to support the children in the exam, those who have special needs.
Okay, so in the examination setting, one of the support that we offer is called accommodations. I must say though, for a child to get accommodations, him or her would have to be assessed. So they must have a psychoeducational report, an assessment report. I know most persons might be familiar with the Bico Care Center. So they do a lot of testings, or Professor Sam's Bond. You have quite a few persons out there who offer this service. And within the ministry, we have our diagnostic team as well, who will offer this service. And once the child has that assessment report, you apply to the student assessment unit here in the ministry, and you apply for what we call accommodations. It's really assistance in the exam. And so once the student assessment gets this request along with a copy of the assessment report, and let me say at this juncture too, that a child, depending on what is happening, the child might only have a medical report because it might be a physical disability that they have, or it might be something that a doctor can speak to. So the psychoeducational report is usually done by a psychologist, because that gives you an IQ score and a processing speed score. And if the child is having disability in reading or in writing or in arithmetic, the doctor's report will suffice if it is a physical or an illness like, let us say, sickle cell anemia, then a doctor's report will suffice. You do your application for accommodation, you submit to SAU, Student Assessment Unit, and it will come over to the Special Education Unit. And a team of officers read through the report, and we decide what accommodation the child qualifies for.
Okay, for the parents who may not be familiar with the term accommodation, just elaborate. So for the children who probably
I'm gonna go further.
Right, so just list them briefly.
All right, so let us say a child who has a learning disability with reading. So it's a specific learning disorder. That's a new term internationally. And let us say it's a specific learning disorder in reading. Depending on what the report is saying, we also look to see what instrument was used to come to the conclusion. And what we can give the child is a reader for the exam. But the assessment report must speak to that. Let us say it's a child with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. We look at the report again, and let us say the psychologists use the Connors, that's an instrument as well, to determine that the child is with ADHD. And for those who don't know, it's kind of, you can't sit still, you tend to get up a lot, you are easily distracted, and there's inattention. That child can be given a prompter in the examination. Okay. So that person will just sit beside the child, not directly beside, because we don't want the person to distract him or her either, but a little bit behind. And what that person does is each time the child is going to look away or move away from task, that person will just tap the child on the shoulder and get him or her back on task. There are some students, though, who they are with ADHD to a moderate to severe level. And so they're not able to stay in the same room with all the other candidates because they can become a distraction. For those students, we give them a separate room. So it would be a separate room with a prompter. For all students who are at their IQ levels fall below 80, 85 and below, they are usually given extra time, especially if the processing speed is that low as well. They get what is called extra time. International standards is 15 minutes for each hour.
Okay.
And so they're given that as well.
So if I have a child that cannot write well, and you have evidence that is the case, what happens in that
Right.
case?
So if a child, if it's an issue with handwriting, and let me be very careful, because it doesn't mean if the child writes out of the line. It has to be, again, the report has to speak to an instrument that was used, and the instrument is showing that the child has a specific learning disability in writing, then that child would be given a script or a scribe, someone who would write for the child. Let me just say though, because I see you're about to ask another question, but very importantly, what we advise to is that it's always good when the child would have been practicing with these persons before. So in the classroom setting at school, they would have had these persons already working. So they know what it's like to get an extra time and how to pace themselves. They know what it's like to work with a reader or a writer.
Okay.
And if not, what we usually recommend to is that you at least apply early so that someone can visit the school and, familiarize themselves with the child and not just on the day off.
The exam. Okay.
Right.
What time frame, and this is my last question to you because we'll be having the question and answer section.
Sure.
How soon should a parent apply?
We don't really have a time frame, to be honest. Once they come
a week
in,
before is sufficient?
Processing.
Is a week before sufficient?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Can I just say that no child will be left behind? Let me put it like that. So I have looked at reports morning off, but sometimes I'm very wary where that is concerned. I usually like to know that the child would have been working with somebody before, and so they will understand how to relate to the accommodation. Because we would want them to be getting this person for the first time and not knowing how to deal with the situation. But as long as school, can say, because I usually make the calls to like night before and I say, did the person have somebody at school working? Yeah, man. So we will give the accommodation for sure.
Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Gale. You have presented a lot of information and I'm sure that the parents are very grateful for this information. Thank you so much. Now we will move on to our next presentation, and this presentation is about verbal reasoning, and this will be done by Mr. Manny Wisdom. He's the literacy specialist in Region 7. Mr. Wisdom, you may go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mrs. Reed-Clark. Good afternoon, parents. Good afternoon, colleagues. Can you just verify for me, Mrs. Reed-Clark, that you are seeing my screen?
Yes, I'm seeing your screen.
All right,
quite
wonderful.
Graphic, lovely.
Wonderful. So we are able to go ahead. I'm so happy to see so many parents here, and I'm noticing that we have almost 1,000 on YouTube as well. I'm sure some students are in that number. Great to have you with us. And I want to talk to you just a little bit this afternoon about verbal reasoning, an important skill for your child's future. So you would have heard from Mrs. Winsome Meeks-Williams that the ability test is divided into two sections. You have qualitative reasoning, and then you have verbal reasoning. Now, I'm sure that every parent here this evening, you are familiar with this look on Kemar's face. Look at him on the screen. Why? Where? Why not? How come? Yes, children ask questions all day long. This is how they get what they want. It is how they learn to negotiate and explain their environment. And it is a crucial aspect of their development. What they are doing is really using up their verbal reasoning skills. And this is a very important language skill that they will need to succeed, not just in school, but to function in society and also to succeed at life. So what is verbal reasoning? Verbal reasoning, parents, is associated with the ability to understand and collect and analyze information in verbal form. So basically what that means, it is the ability to understand and reason using words. Now, this is a skill that we use every day as adults. We often have to explain our reasons for doing something. I know we've heard that word being used so much this afternoon, explanation. You know, you go to the supermarket and you buy something and you reach home to find out it is not good. You'll have to take it back and explain what the issue is. You know, probably you went to KFC and you bought something and you got back the wrong change. What are you going to have to do to sort that out? You're going to have to use words to sort out that problem. And when you get home, you may relate the whole incident to your family and friends again using words. So verbal reasoning skills, parents, they allow our children and allow human beings to understand possible outcomes, to use language to negotiate their way, and to make sure that the outcomes will suit them. So what can you do to help your child? I know many parents here are wondering, is this something I can help my child with? You know, I don't have a fancy degree. I'm not a teacher. What can I do? Well, the definite answer is yes, you can help your child. There are many ways to work with your child to develop verbal reasoning skills. And the most obvious way is through practice. Now, the ability test will have different types of questions that will assess the verbal reasoning skills of the children. I have the categories listed here on the screen: analogy, classification, essential part, sequencing, text completion, reading, artificial language, logical deductions. These are the broad categories in verbal reasoning that will be tested. They can be drawn from any or all of these sections. We will not have time for me to go through all of them with you this afternoon, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you 2 of them and spend a little time talking about strategies that you can use to help the children to develop in these categories. And then for the other 6, all I will do is show you an example of what that type of question might look like. All right, so I trust you are ready to go with me now, and we will interact during the chat while we are doing this. The first one I want to talk about is what we call analogy type questions, where the students will have to identify what is similar between a pair of words and then use that similarity to complete another pair of words. So are you seeing the example on the screen? Time is to clock as temperature is to, and I see persons are already typing the answer in the chat. Now, what the teachers would be doing in the school, it is not so much just to show them the question and work through the answers, but it is to help them with strategies that they can use to figure these things out on their own. So parents, let me show you one of the ways that we teach children to attack questions like these, to attack analogy questions. We use what are called bridge sentences, and we all know what's a bridge. A bridge connects one place to the other. You know, you have to cross a river, you have to use a bridge. Right. A bridge sentence connects 2 words based on their meanings and how they relate to each other. So if you look at these examples that I have on the screen, key and unlock. How can I create a sentence that will pair the word key with unlock, that will join them together? I could say a key is used to unlock. And then when I make that sentence, I can then transfer that sentence to the next pair of words so I can figure out what is missing. Let us look at these examples and type the answers in the chat for me. Let us see if we can build bridge sentences together. Let's look at the first one. Tree, leaves. Who can type a bridge sentence in the chat for me quickly for that one? How can we link tree and leaves? A tree, thank you, Sean and Phillips, wonderful. A tree has leaves. Let's try cheerful and grumpy. Cheerful and grumpy. Can we link those 2 together? Think about the words. How are they related to each other? Cheerful is the antonym, yes, Ariana, or the opposite, Yanika Pitt, of grumpy. Very good. What about knife and cut? we can say that a knife is used to cut. So you're getting the picture that I'm trying to share with you, parents, of how you can use this strategy of what we call bridge sentences to help your students. So a page is a part of a book. Broccoli is a type of vegetable. So let us now use the concept of bridge sentences to solve a question that the child might see in the exam. Let's look at this example here. So let's read the instruction together, everybody. Think about how the first pair of words are related to each other. Then look at the next word and choose the word that is related to it in the same way. Pumpkin is to vine as pear is to... Now, I don't want the answer. What I want you to do for me is to give me a bridge sentence with pumpkin and vine. Let me see who will be the first one to put... Oh, wonderful, Kedisha. You're on the ball. Pumpkin grows on a vine. And then we're going to take that same sentence now and say, pear grows on a... There you go, Adonijah Bromfield. Wonderful. Pear grows on a tree. And so the answer is B. Let's try this second one and then we leave analogy alone. Broom is to dirt as rake is to... I know you know the answer, but I want to make sure you are getting the concept of the bridge sentence. Who can give me the bridge sentence for broom and dirt? All right, a broom is used to sweep dirt. So a rake is used to sweep. And I see everybody is just participating so wonderfully. So broom sweeps the dirt and the rake will sweep the leaves. So C is the answer. Again, what are we looking at, parents? This is one type of verbal reasoning question that your student may see in the exam. It's called analogy. Remember, I said there were 8 of them, and I'm only going to show you 2. So here is the second one. This one is a little more involved. So let's look at this together. This one is called artificial language. So the children will have to analyze words that are not real English words. They are really based on some invented or some made up language, some made up rules or patterns, and they will have to figure out words based on these made up rules or patterns. So let's look at this now. The words in bold come from an artificial language and they tell you what they mean. So Hifon Slock means fill cup, Merslock means blue cup, Rospot Hifon means landfill. And the child is now going to have to figure out which of these answer choices could mean fill bottle. You may say, Mr. Wisdom, I don't know how to do this at all. How can you help your child? Listen to Mr. Wisdom now. You have to help your child to see the patterns. Everybody see the patterns. So if you look at this, you will notice the first 2 words, they have the same end, S-L-O-K or slock. And both of them, they have cup in the meaning. And so slock is at the end and cup is at the end. So we can therefore deduce that slock means cup. And so if we continue now, you realize that there is also a common word part in 2 of the other words, the word fill. And so what that says to me is that slock means cup and Hifon means fill. What are we trying to figure out? Fill bottle. So we know what fill means. Hifon is fill. So that means our answer has to begin with Hifon. Let's look at the answer choices. Which of the answer choices actually has Hifon at the start? Only B has that answer at the start. I want you to see how we can use the strategy, parents, to help our children. So when they come home from school in the afternoons and you realize they are doing these kinds of examples, you can find them, you can make up your own, you can go online and you can find them and use this strategy to help them to pick up the word parts. Let us try these examples and then we will move on so we can wrap up the presentation here. Let's look at these here. Who is going to type this quickly for me? Look at these words translated from an artificial language and tell me which word could mean fair weather. Let us look at it carefully I see persons are typing their answer in the chat. I'm not sure if you're responding to the first question or to this one. But if you look at it carefully, you will notice that GEMO means fear, because we have that as a part of the first line. Gemolinia means fear, warning. So the answer here is actually A, and I see a number of persons are typing in the chat, and it seems like you have that correct. Let's look at this final one for artificial language. Stop typing A now. Let's see if you can catch this one. Who is the first one to give me this answer? Which word could mean cupcake? And I see, my gosh, everybody is just on the ball this afternoon. Look at them go. So the answer is really D. You're all correct. So pleka means fruit, paki means cake, shlen means walk, treft means butter, allen means cup, and so cupcake would have to be D. Very good. So those are two of the types of questions that the students will see for verbal reasoning. Let us see if you remember them. The first type I did was what? Analogy. And the second type is called artificial language. There are 6 other classification types when it comes to verbal reasoning that they may be exposed to. And I'm going to show you an example of what each of those may look like in terms of a question. And then I'm going to end my presentation. This one is called classification. And for this example, all of the answer choices except one of them will have a feature in common. All of them have something in common except one. And the job of the student is going to be to identify the odd one out. I see a number of persons typing that the answer is salt. Let me pick on somebody. Why is salt the odd one out? Tell me, what do all the others have in common? Oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and helium. Ah, I see somebody typing it here. Ariana is typing it and Jaden is typing it. All of them are gases, and salt is not a gas. Very good. Let's look at this other example that's called essential part. For this type of question, the student will have to identify which part from a given list is an absolute necessity. You can't do without that part. Now, this one is a little more tricky. Which is an essential part of the word in bold? Which is an essential part of the word school? I see that some persons have said desk is the answer, but no. The question that the student must ask him or herself is, which of these you could not have a school without it? Could you have a school without desks? Yes, you could. Could you have a school without tests? Yes, you could. In fact, Mr. Wisdom would love a school without tests. I know you would love that too. Could you have a school without a report card? Of course you could. But can you have a school without students? No, you cannot. And so the essential part here, the one that we cannot do without, is student. Pat yourself on the shoulder if you said student was the answer. We are now looking at, I believe, number 6 of 8. This one is called sequencing. And let me pause because I'm looking over in the chat and I'm noticing that some persons are not only putting the answer, but they are also writing justifications for their answers. And I want to applaud you because that is a major part of what PEP is about, justifying your answers. So kudos to all of you. We are racing to an end now. Sequencing. This is similar to something you would have seen in quantitative reasoning. The students are going to be required to analyze patterns, and they will have to use the patterns to determine what should be next based on whatever order is established. Now, parents, this is one of those categories where they need lots of practice. They need to be exposed to many types of question types so that they can pick up regular patterns. Let's look at this one here. Country, village, county, parish. As I look at this, and it says to me, I am to sequence this in terms of size. And so I can either now notice carefully They did not tell me if I should go smallest to biggest, or if I should go biggest to smallest. So what are you going to do? If you organize it one way and you do not see the answers, let us say that you organize it smallest to biggest, and you don't see that answer in the answer choices, then what will you then have to do? Turn it the other way around and see if you see biggest to smallest. All right, so I see the answers there. I don't have to run through that because you're on the ball. The next one is called text completion, where they are going to have to read and determine from a choice of words which one fits into the context. And it may be based on variations in spelling or meaning or usage. So in this particular example, the man was worried about his growing, and I see BALD, his growing bald spot. Let me pause to tell you, for answering questions like these, you know what helps students? If you allow them to read widely. The more they read, the more experiences and background knowledge they will have, and the better they will do in activities like this. The next one is reading. I don't have to stay very long here. They are going to be required, they may be required to read a short passage, a paragraph or a short passage, and then they will have to answer a question or two at the literal or inferential level. And then the final category is what we call logical deductions. This is where students may be given a conclusion, and then they have to find a supporting premise, or they are given a set of premises, and then they are required to find a corresponding logical conclusion. This again is another example of a category where they need lots of examples and practice in their preparation. So Jackie's mother's sister has a son. How would that son be related to Jackie? He is Jackie's. Now let me tell you how Mr. Wisdom does this. When I approach these questions, I put myself in the mix, because I know who is my mother, I know who is my mother's sister. And so I put myself into the question and try to work it out based on how I know my family is organized. And that can help them to figure out the answers. So once again, we have looked at the 8 categories from which questions may be drawn for verbal reasoning. Parents, the final thing I want to say to you is have fun while you are helping your child. Don't make it laborious and full of drudgery like it is a chore or punishment. No, let them enjoy the time with you, because I tell you, enjoyable time spent with a parent is one of the greatest indicators of student success. Thank you so much for paying attention and for your participation during this session on verbal reading. God bless you, and have a wonderful afternoon as you continue to prepare your young charges for the exam in a few days. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wisdom. That was quite interactive. I saw persons responding, and they definitely enjoyed it. Parents, I know that you have been on this platform for a while and you have many questions, and we are going to be going into the question and answer section. I am now inviting Mrs. Stacy Witter-Bailey from the Student Assessment Unit, and I'm going to ask her to just outline the exam so parents can understand, you know, what type of exam is it, how many questions and so on, what time does the exam begin, how many sections. Just some basic information about the exam. So us as parents, this is my year, us as parents can understand, and you can help to relieve some of our fears. And after which we will open the floor for the questions and answers. Go ahead, Mrs. Witter-Bailey.
All right, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mrs. G. Clark. Thank you so much. Parents, the children will be fine. I promise they will. They always are. So I don't want you to stress too much about it. We, as parents, we carry the anxiety, and sometimes we tend to pass it off on the children, but we have to learn to control that anxiety and just keep them calm. They will be fine. The teachers have been preparing them. They're in a high preparation mode right now, and you have also been working with them, so they'll be okay. They will be okay. You have to just trust that when they go in there, they're going to do their best, and they usually do. They usually do very well. So the primary exit profile for this year for grade 6 students, our first test, which is the ability test, is scheduled to be administered on Tuesday, February 22, 2022. The exam will last for 1 hour and 15 minutes, and it is scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. at each center. And your child's center is usually the child's school. The ability test is made up of 40 multiple choice questions, 20 verbal, 20 quantitative. There is no break in between. They go for 1 hour and 15 minutes, and it has proven over the years to be more than enough time. So they'll have enough time to answer their questions. So they'll answer they'll sit for the 1 hour and 15 minutes and complete their exam. For sample questions that would have been administered in 2019, the unit has released some booklets with some sample questions. You can visit our PEP website at pep.moey.gov.jn, pep.moey.gov.jn. Click on past papers and you will see the most recent release of PEP sample questions. The questions are very detailed. They have, each question has a description, and it also comes with solutions. So you have some resource and some help there. Timetables will be sent out or will be distributed next week. They will show all the exam dates. They will have your child's biographic data, biodata, their name, date of birth. I want when your child takes home their timetables next week, I want you to check to ensure that all the information about your child is correct. Spelling of your name, spelling of the child's name, date of birth, etc. If there are any any incorrect information on it regarding your child's name and so on, please communicate with your school, your child's school. When you communicate with the child's school, the school will then communicate and then email to SAU registration. The schools are familiar with that email address and they will let us know. So there's going to be a period of time where we where we process those queries. Okay, so ensure that you check those timetables properly. Parents, please keep those timetables in a safe place. You don't have to send them out to the students every time they're going to sit, but keep the timetables in a safe place until results are released, because after results are released, you're going to need them to access any scholarship that your child may receive. All right, so ensure that you keep those timetables in a safe place. And that's pretty much it for the ability test. And I want to leave you with some tips. You have received so much useful information. I really want to pause and commend the core curriculum unit and their support staff that's here with them. The information here is invaluable. Very, very good and useful information. And you would have received, trust me, a handful this evening, and it was very well presented. So thank you, colleagues. You did an excellent job. So some things I didn't hear of this evening that I'm going to remind you of coming from the unit. In preparing your child to sit PEP, have your child the night before organize his or her things that they need for the exam the following day. So uniform, you wear it to school. If you're required to put on your uniform, lay it out. Clean your shoes, do everything. Get those pencils sharpened. The clean eraser. We recommend HB2 pencils for the shading because they will be shading, and I'll talk about that in a little later. So organize everything nicely the night before so that in the morning when they get up, you're not running around to find things. It keeps them calm. We're trying to limit any anxiety that we can, right? Have them go to bed early. Take a break from the studying. Parents, don't have them studying the night before, please. Take a break from the studying, take a break from the TV. Just do something relaxing before and have them go to bed early. They get a good night's rest. When they get up in the morning, as far as is possible, have them have a nice, healthy breakfast. Not a belly full so that they're going to go and sleep in the exam or be lethargic, but enough so it can sustain them for the time they'll be at school and they're not hungry. For those of us who are Christians and believe in God, have your devotion with your child. If it's the only day you may have devotion with them, that's a good day. Have devotion with them. Call on the power of God, right? He's able. Ensure before you leave the house that they have their things. So they have their pencils, they have a clean eraser, and these days you have your mask. Make sure they walk with their mask. They need their mask, right? Leave home on time. Anticipate traffic or any other eventualities that may come our way, right? A flat tire. Leave way before time so you can get to the center well before time. Not on time, but well before time. So the child, your child can be calm. Because if you're running late and you're panicking, the child is panicking, it's going to be so it's going to throw them off. It's going to throw them off. And you don't want it to throw them off. You want them to go in the exam with a calm spirit and a calm mind, ready to execute what they have practiced and they have gone through. When they go in the exam, encourage them. Read the instructions carefully, right? When they get their paper, the invigilator passes out the paper, they read the instructions carefully. They will be required to respond to the questions in the booklet that they are given. So they'll be given their booklet with their 40 questions. When they open it, they're going to shade the response to the answers in the booklet, all right? And also remind them, do not make any stray marks, and the invigilators will take care of it, but just so you know, and you can encourage them. Don't make any stray marks, especially where they see what we call the timing lines, those black marks in the booklet. Tell them not to mark there. They can do their little scribbles on the inside of the paper, but they're not to mark up the paper too much, all right? Because when we scan it to get the result, it can be a problem. They encourage your child to read each question carefully and to try to respond to every question. There are 40 questions. Try to give a response to each question. Don't leave anything blank. Each question requires only one response. And once they do that and they follow the instructions of the presiding examiners and the invigilators' parents, they will be fine. Be rested that they will be fine. All right, Karine? So all the best, parents. We are here for you. Any questions you have, you can send an well, we communicate with schools. So just ask your school if there's anything that you're not sure of, and the schools should be able to answer. If they're not, they know how to communicate with the student assessment unit.
Mrs. Bailey, there was a question in the chat about a homeschool parent. She wanted to know how that would work in terms of registration. All right.
The homeschool parents should have registered. Well, that registration should have been done already at the student assessment unit. If you are registered with the independent schools unit, then that message should have been, you should have received that message from before. If you have not been, if you still have your child homeschool and you have not registered them, you need to send an email to sauregistration@moey.gov.jm immediately. SAU registration, one word, dot MOEY at, hold on, I got confused. SAU registration at, sorry, MOEY.gov.jm. to advise us that you would like your child to be registered, and then we will contact you. Or come down to 37 Arnold Road where the student assessment unit is, and register your child as quickly as possible. Registration had closed quite a while ago. For our homeschool parents, remember that you will receive an email from the SAU asking you of your option in terms of where you'd like your child to sit, and we will communicate with you, the parent, directly. All right? So that's it for now.
Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Witter Bailey. Dr. Campbell, can you manage the chat for me, please? And indicate the persons who would have raised their hands so they can go ahead and ask the question.
Okay, yes, they can start to post their questions related to this session, to the ability test session, please. All right. And please resist the temptation to type all sorts of things in the chat. All right. Or else I'll have to put you in the waiting room or take you out of the meeting. Okay. Thank you.
Right. So I see some hands up, Dr. Taylor. Can you select, please, so they can go ahead?
Give me a sec. Let me get them up. Okay, so we'll start with Samantha. Samantha, you can unmute. No? Okay, all right, let's go to Kareem. Kareem has been asking to speak. Go ahead, Kareem. Yes?
Good night, everyone. I am a student at Clancarty Primary School. I was wondering if you're in the test and you accidentally book up on a question that has two multiple choice and you don't know what to pick, what will you do?
Okay. Okay, Kareem, there are times when a question may actually suggest that there are two answers, right? But once it is a single answer, then only one answer is best. So you will try to see which answer is best for that question. Okay. We're asking parents to indicate their questions, really. All right. Okay. Yeah, thank you. All right. Okay. We have this one says parent. Go ahead, parent. Nope.
Good evening, Miss.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I would like to know where I could find the past papers.
Okay, Miss Witter Bailey, she is going to type it in the chat, and she is also going to type the information regarding SAU registration. So just continue to follow the chat and you will see it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
May I just say, Karine, real quick? Please remember that the SAU registration email is for schools only, except for the homeschool parents. We don't want it to get clogged and then we miss important information. So please be very mindful of using that email. It is only about registration. And that email is really for schools. However, if there's any homeschool parent that has missed the registration, then we know that. Okay, we don't want to miss important information. Thank you.
Okay,
there's a question from a student here. It says, Miss, what if we circle 2 and one of them is correct? It don't. What will happen? I think that is what he was asking.
Oh, well, I don't know if Mrs. Butterbill is answering, but generally, yes, go ahead, Miss.
Generally, if a student does that, they would not be awarded the point. You must just shade, not circle, shade in the area there. The instructions are on the paper. So shade in the bubble, that is for the one that you choose. You must shade only one answer. If you shade 2, you will not be awarded for the point. You will not be awarded the point.
Thank you for that. Another question is, will the students be allowed to work in the booklets? And I think that is a yes.
Okay.
Yes, Karine. The only place we don't want them to work is where those black marks are along the edges of the paper.
Okay.
Black marks, we call them timing lines. Those are for the scanning machine to read the information. And so we don't want them working over there. They don't have to, but once they don't touch it.
Okay, and thank you. There's another question about can the students wear this or that? Please remember that on the day of the test, it is a regular school day. Regular school day, students must abide by the rules of the school. They should be dressed in their uniforms.
Someone is asking about the homeschool student. What's the dress code for that? It was in the chat. I'm not sure. Well, if they're not attending school, then they're not attending school.
But what normally happens is that there's a good relationship between the school and the center and the person who is coming from the home environment. So it is not really a challenge. If that child is dressed appropriately, there is no challenge.
Okay, are you taking any more raised hands? Let me see.
Yes, you can go ahead with more raised hands.
Michelle can unmute.
Oh, hi, good evening. I was going to ask, but someone had asked if they could write in the workbook, and it was answered. And I also want to know if you give them paper to work with, to like work out anything they want to work out, will they be allowed to use the paper?
No.
The blank paper?
Only the paper provided in the exam.
Oh, they are provided with paper as well.
Or
No,
they can
no,
write
they're not
the...
provided with paper. There's enough space in the booklet for them.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's a question that says, will the students be COVID tested before the test? No, that will not happen. And there another question about the vaccine. No, it is a regular school day, parents. We are not going to be imposing anything on the children on the day of the exam. We want them to be as comfortable as possible.
All right, Miss Findlay, Marcia Findlay.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I came in late to the meeting. I would like to know if this test is applied to the grade 5 students as well.
Well, okay, so this session was targeting the grade 6 ability test, but some of the strategies mentioned can still apply for the grade 5 students as they prepare. That performance task will be in June, so you have more time to work on that. All right.
A very important question here also. They're asking the ability test, what percentage of the final grade does it make up?
All right, well, I'm not able to communicate that right now, because remember that we're in a very unique situation. We have this set of students, this cohort of grade 6 students would not have done any national test before, no grade 4, no grade 5. Those were canceled in 2020 and 21. So we are still working that out, and we will communicate that to the system as soon as we have decided on the weighting moving forward.
Okay, so we are now at 7:15 and we have had a long session. I will leave the final words to Dr. Francine Taylor Campbell, and then I will close. Dr. Campbell, please go ahead.
Okay, parents, just to say, persons were asking, remember the session was carried live on YouTube, so you can always go on that link, Jamaica Teaching Council YouTube channel. You will get to watch the session again if you missed a part of it. Just remember the points that were raised by different presenters, as well as by Mrs. Witter Bailey. So if you go and watch that again, you will pick up any information that you would have missed. All right. We know that we have kept you long, but I trust that the fact that you remained meant that we were doing something good. And so we have noted your comments about getting you help much earlier in the term, and we will see how we can address that at another time. Thank you for joining us. And please, there are a lot of the questions that probably the students are asking in the chat. They can get some help from their class teacher, all right? So they can bring those comments to their class teacher, who can give them some further support and give them directions, okay? Thank you again for joining, and thanks to all our colleagues from the Ministry of Education Core Curriculum Unit, from our Guidance and Counseling Unit, from the Welfare Unit, Ms. Sheena Stewart, from SAU, Mrs. Witter Bailey, from our Literacy team, from our Mathematics team, Mrs. Meeks Williams and Mr. Wisdom, Ms. Colson and Ms. Dion Gale, Mrs. Angela Murphy, and all persons who made this possible, regional education officers, and Ms. Karine Reed, who was instrumental in getting us to have this session. Thank you again, and blessings to all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Campbell. I know that our children will do well, and I believe that as parents, we will definitely provide the required support. Ladies and gentlemen, have a blessed evening, and we hope that all our children will do exceptionally well on the PEP exam. This meeting is officially terminated.
Thank you. Okay, all right. Okay, I think there was somebody asking about. Okay, so remember, for persons who need help to in terms of accommodation, you can get in touch with the special education unit, all right, and make representation, okay, so that you can have your case, well, your daughter or son, for their case to be heard, all right? Okay, colleagues, goodbye.